Tighten up.
Yep.
I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
RX Television on RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, diet, training, supplementation, IFBB, pros, news, whatever's on your mind, it is all on the table. Hard to believe. The 2022 Mr. Olympia is in just over 6 weeks. Crazy to think. In just 6 weeks, we're going to be setting up shop. Myself, Chris Cito, Lee Priest, I think King Kamali is going to be joining our coverage. John Romano is going to be there on site. So we're going to have, a literal whack pack out there in Vegas. Dave, of course, is going to be manning everything back in the studio. So we're going to get instant reactions as prejudgings wrap up, as finals wrap up. So we're going to have you covered from all angles. But again, crazy to think that in 6 weeks we're going to be we're going to be at the Olympia. But between now and then, obviously, now we're going to really start, revving up the engine as far as the road to the Olympia, the coverage, the previews, all the segments. We're going to be bringing back Iron Debate. We're going to have, industry experts come in and break down certain competitors, certain matchups, so on and so forth. So a lot to look forward to over the course of the next 6 weeks. And now bringing Dave Palumbo. Dave, today is the final day of the pumpkin spice isolize sale at beetnutrition.com. Now, this is something we launched on Halloween Day. We figured we'd make a Halloween promotion out of it. $24.99. Now, here's the thing. On the website, we have the green label bottles with the pumpkin, on it, pumpkin spice. But in reality, they're getting the alternate version this time around, right? They're getting the orange labeled.
No, you didn't watch my video. It's funny. Yeah. I did this funny video. I'm trying to pull up the sale for a second so people can see it. What happened was I did this video on a green screen, and I put the Halloween background in there, but I forgot that the Species bottle is green, so it changed the green background, so which was orange. So it actually made the bottle look like it was orange instead of green, which looked awesome. I wish it really was like that, but.
That went over my head because I was going to text you today. I was going to be like, Dave, can you take a picture of the orange bottle and send it to me?
I put in the video, I put a little thing saying that's not the color of the bottle because I know someone's going to say to me, I got the wrong bottle, No, yeah. So, yeah, we sold a lot of them. We're almost out. So, guys, if you really want to act on this, this is the last day. $24.99. It's half price on pumpkin spice. I guarantee you, once you use this flavor, it'll be one of your favorite flavors because I can't stop using it. My wife's like, you use this every single night. She's like, don't you switch to anything? I said, I use what I like. I like the flavor. I used to be a vanilla peanut butter. Now I'm using pumpkin spice. Matter of fact, I mix the two together sometimes. The vanilla peanut butter and the pumpkin spice. It's delicious.
So again, $24.99 last day. So the sale is going to end at 11:59 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Get it before it runs out, speciesnutrition.com. Let's go to the questions. Of course, the first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question. Hold on a second. We already had this question. Did we get a new one? We
did.
All right. The one that I'm seeing right now, when did you send this to me? 2 days ago, was about the necessity of a peak week, which we already had last week.
All right,
so I'll take the second question that we did not get last week. Again, this from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Some coaches say we shouldn't mix sugars and fats for performance in the gym or even in general. Your opinion on this?
I made a statement years ago, Sid, that I said It was the biggest mistake ever. One of the few things that I said that was wrong. I say a lot of things wrong, but this was a big. I said, you should never mix fat and carbs in the same meal because you could potentially store the fat as fat, which is really not true because carbs cause insulin release. Insulin stores carbs as fat. So I kind of like this was. I'm talking in the 90s. I said this, and to this day, I think people are still reiterating it. And it's just not the case, as long as you're not eating excessive amounts of calories. I mean, and I hate using the term calories, but let's face it, if you eat too much of energy, you put too much energy in the system, the body is going to store some of that energy as something, whether it be glycogen in the muscles and liver or fat in the fat cells. So, but assuming you're eating what your body needs, and look, most of the time in the off season, guys can barely gain a pound or two a week. I mean, because their metabolisms are fast, they need a lot of food. So you almost have to combine protein, fat, and carbs in the same meal, because if you don't, you're not going to get enough calories, and you can't eat. No one can eat 300 grams of carbs per sitting. It's just not feasible, and it's probably going to completely burn your pancreas out because there's no way your pancreas can produce enough insulin if you're eating 300 grams every 2 hours around the clock. It's just too much. So you absolutely can do protein with fats and carbs. Usually what I recommend is about a half a gram of fat per pound that you weigh. So spread out over 5 or 6 meals. So that usually works out to somewhere around, 20 to, anywhere from 15 to 30 grams of fat, depending on how much you weigh, obviously, per meal. Protein will vary from, depending on how much you weigh, from 40 to, 60 grams per meal. And then, carbs is going to really vary the most because that's going to be really a determinant of your metabolism. And I see guys who can eat, 50, 60 grams of carbs per meal, even up to 70. And then I have other guys, that or women that obviously need to have less, like 30 grams, because if they eat too many grams of carbs, they get fat in the off season. Because look, the goal is to build muscle, not to build weight. Okay. Just because you gain 25 pounds in the off season doesn't mean it's 25 pounds of muscle. I've seen guys only gain 17, 18 grams of 18 pounds of scale weight, but yet, 13 of that was solid, and then I've seen guys gain 60 pounds of weight and only, 7 pounds of that was solid. So because they just got fat. So you have to really understand that the protein and the fat are building muscle, and it's the carbs that are fueling all the, the gym workouts and all that kind of stuff that's going on during the day. So you want enough carbs so that your body's not using the fat and protein you're eating for fuel, but you don't want too many grams of carbs where your body's going to start storing it at an accelerated rate as body fat. And that's, once again, I said this a million times, that's determined by your metabolic rate and how your body responds. And that's why it's important to have a coach who could look at you and say, you know what, all right, we're going to cut back carbs this week a little bit, or we're going to raise carbs this week, or we're going to do an extra cheat meal this week because your body's, metabolism is so crazy, or you know what, we're going to do a little bit of cardio because I think you get a little too fat around the waist. And that's, once again, this happens, you're going to go up and down and up and down and up and down, and you're going to teeter this line. As long as you're gaining muscle throughout the process, then you do it right.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us on Instagram, the handle is official_RXMuscle. If you follow us there, obviously now it is peak progress picture season. So as they come out, we're trying to repost as many as possible just to keep everyone in the loop. But obviously this is the part where you're going to start to see the competitors for the Olympia and their final stages of progression heading into the big show. So again, between that and then of all the preview segments we're going to be putting a lot of clips on the Instagram. And then, of course, while we're in Vegas, between our feed, between our stories, going to be absolutely loaded. So if you haven't already followed us there, follow us there. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you're watching us for the first time, we welcome you. Subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss any of our shows, segments, or live updates between now and the Olympia. Let's go to Dan Schreibert, good friend of the show. Can you recommend a good over-the-counter blood pressure supplement? I can't take Carditone because it gives me wicked nasal congestion. I'm assuming he's from New England. Would beetroot help with BP at all? My BP is elevated a bit due to a test cycle, and I'm trying to avoid taking an AI due to the negative side effects on lipids.
What did he say he couldn't take initially? He said he couldn't take something. I missed what you said.
Carditone.
What is it called?
Carditone. CARD.
I don't even know what that is, but if you have high blood pressure, I mean, I don't understand what the big deal is. If you have high blood pressure, take a blood pressure medication. If if you're getting ready for a competition, for bodybuilding competition, you want to dry out the last day before a show, most people will take a prescription diuretic because it's very precise in what it does. They're not going to start taking massive doses of vitamin C and dandelion root and all this other stuff to try to lose water, because it's like, well, how much do I really take? Does it work well? It's not that effective. A mild ACE inhibitor like ramipril, lisinopril, 5 milligrams twice a day, you're going to lower your blood pressure. You're going to basically safeguard your kidneys. Most of these ACE inhibitors allow the kidneys to filter better because it keeps the kidney tubules more dilated. Even the AR, the angiotensin receptor blockers like telmisartan and valsartan, those are fine too. I personally don't use those. I use the ACE inhibitors. I think that they've been around longer, more education behind them. I think the angiotensin receptor blockers is a little bit of controversy lately that came out that with, I think, some pancreatic cancer or they found. And so and that runs in my family, so I'm not really too keen on that. But by and far, the ACE inhibitors are really safe, and they'll lower the blood pressure. And you don't have to start taking weird supplements to do that. I don't know, why, people are afraid. And you know what? When I was first, bodybuilding and my blood pressure was like a little high at first, nothing crazy. And the doctor suggested blood pressure medication. I felt the same way because there was really no education. No one talked about them. No one was on them. I'm like, that's going to inhibit muscle growth, I thought right away, because there was no one like me out there or anyone else that's an educator explaining to people that these are not bad. These are actually good things to take. We take an aromatase inhibitor because we don't want too much estrogen, right? We don't say, oh, it's going to screw up our cycle. We do it because we don't want the side effects of that. Well, same thing with blood pressure medication. We take that to alleviate, high blood pressure so that the kidneys don't get damaged, because we know we need our kidneys if we want to be good bodybuilders and we want to live a long life. So that would be my recommendation.
So I'm not going to ask this question now. What I'm going to do is, because we tease this fairly often, that we're going to bring back certain segments. So there's one segment that we used to do, and it was a pretty hot segment called Versus, right? We would do matchups, virtual matchups, cross-generational matchups. So the question from Soren Popa is Prime Jay Cutler versus Prime Nasser, who would win. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you this one, Dave. We're going to do a separate segment on this. I'll send you the pictures, and let's bring that segment back. Let's go to Moskin at 67.
I don't think it is respectful to me to suggest that Cutler, he is blocky and he has a big waist. He would never beat me on stage, and he has never beaten me. And except when I had the Synthol on my shoulders, but I don't want to talk about that right now. But they're very blocky, and it is an insult to my intelligence for Jay Cutler to be insinuated, even though he has won the Olympia. But I was cheated in '97 when Dorian Yates was given the title, and the fans know that I have won the show, but they would not give it to me because I am balding on my head and I wear glasses.
Oh my God! You're gonna have to do that entire segment as if you were Nasser.
Maybe Nasser. I should have Nasser do the Versus episode with me.
I think we're just gonna do live with Nasser. I'll interview you as Nasser. It'll be better you interview yourself, isn't it? Right. We got a couple of FIBERLYZE related questions. So this is from Kasim. Why does FIBERLYZE saying that may cause cancer on it? I guess on the label, it says it's been using it for 3 years. Can you clarify?
Now, there's something called Prop 65, which is something only California requires. They have a very, very sensitive testing of all products that for lead. And if there's like trace, I'm talking like everything that grows in the ground had some trace lead in it. I mean, anything. If you eat a cucumber, a fruit, salads, put it this way: with all the vegetables that I eat, if I don't have lead poisoning, then it doesn't exist. No, but so California has this very, very sensitive level, whereas no other state has this, because it's ridiculous the amounts that they can detect and say that that's a problem, or potential problem. In reality, there's no problem. There's no toxicity from any of this. You're not going to get lead buildup in your system, but they require that you put this on the label. Now, the weird thing is the law says if you have less than less than 50 employees or something like that, you don't have to put it on the label. The law is ridiculous. So what I did was I like to be compliant with everything. So we put it on our FIBERLYZE because fiber, psyllium grows in the ground. So because it grows in the ground, it potentially could, have trace lead. And the funny thing is if you test, lot to lot, some of them are a little higher than others. Most of them have like almost zero, but you can find some lots depending on where they harvest, and the time of the year that will have more or less. But I'm talking there's arsenic in oranges. People don't realize, but it's levels that are ridiculously low. So you can find anything that grows in the ground. You can find almost every metal in there, good and bad. And so because if you sell on Amazon and Amazon sells basically to the world, if you're gonna sell on Amazon, you have to put that on there. Now we put that on the label prior to even selling on Amazon. This was years ago, and now there's a lot of companies out there that are lawsuit happy that want to try to sue people if they're not putting this on the label. So you're gonna see a lot more companies adding it. I have seen recently a lot of companies adding it to their labels of a lot of their products. Greens products grow in the ground too, same thing. So it's kind of like a weird thing, and a lot of people don't understand it. And a lot of companies put variations of the warning on there, but once people see it on every product, they're going to understand it's kind of just like a bullshit thing that they put on there. But you have to put it on there. That's if you want to be legally compliant.
Somebody else asked, let me see if I could ask who was it? Nico Cantemir. When you take FIBERLYZE 2 times a day, what are the best times to take FIBERLYZE?
I'm sometimes I'm a creature of habit, but if I'm traveling, sometimes it's hard to determine when I'm going to take it. So what I try to do by convention is take it around 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I'm not eating at that point, and then I take it before bed. Now you can take it with a meal or not. I just feel like after a meal I'm kind of full, and then fiber kind of fills you up. In addition to that, so I don't want to have all that. I don't want to feel so full. So I literally take it right before I go to bed, which is good because when I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, move my bowels, and then I take it midday, which is good because then I go to the bathroom around before dinner time or thereabouts, or at least before bed, and so that seems to work for me. Some people take it, because they're not home all day. I'm home all day, so a lot of people take it first thing in the morning, and then they take it first thing, before bed, and see that's fine as well. There's really no perfect time. Just try to separate the dosages by at least 3 or 4 hours. Preferably, 6 or to 12 hours is better if you can take it, halfway through the day, and then the other half, and that's just going to keep you very regular. Now, sometimes I'll forget to take it the second time, and I do notice a difference in my bowel movements. So I like to take it twice a day. I just feel good. I always feel kind of empty in my stomach, which is nice to walk around with, not having that feeling that, oh, I got to go, but I can't go. Once people use FIBERLYZE, they kind of understand why it's so great. It's you got to give it a shot to kind of understand how good it works, because a lot of people think, hey, I go to the bathroom a lot during the day, I don't need it. But when you use it, you'll understand that it's actually getting more out of you than you think you even got in you.
So I wanted you to offer a clarification because even yesterday during after hours, especially in the live comments and kind of last week too, I guess what's going on with Tyler, the creator, Tyler, our producer. For those that don't know, Tyler just recently moved to Tallahassee, Florida. Yeah. So people are interested, curious, what is his status with RXMuscle moving forward?
He, I love the guy. I wish he was still here. But he's a young guy. He's 30 years old. He's trying to find. He wanted to buy a house, and I guess houses were a lot more affordable up there. And it's like a college town, which he kind of likes that atmosphere. And so he's, he bought a house up there. He's still editing some stuff for us that we upload to him on a daily basis. But by and far, anything in studio, I'm kind of engineering myself right now. Now, I'm not against hiring someone else if there's someone local who has those skill set, just to make my job a little easier. But I did it before we ever had anyone here, and I can do it myself. Or now with StreamYard and stuff like that, it's pretty easy to do yourself. I don't like it because I like to really focus on doing the content. I don't want to have to be also the director and the producer at the same time, but I don't mind doing it. But once again, I understand Tyler was with us a long time, and I had a good friendship with him, and I know if I needed him for like a special shoot, he's still available. It's a 6-hour drive, so he's a little far from us.
Let's go to Sarbot Sura. His question is about IGF INCRELEX, doses, side effects. If you could discuss a little bit more. Basically, he goes on to say his English is not great, but his general point is that it's being used a lot in the Middle East, very popular amongst Middle Eastern bodybuilders. What is it about this IGF that's different from other IGFs?
Let me just pull this up here. INCRELEX is IGF-1. Okay, it's not long R3 IGF-1, which is what we see on all the peptide sites. Now, on paper, theoretically, long R3 IGF-1 should be better than regular IGF-1, and I'll tell you why. Because they've added a side group to it, which makes it last longer in the bloodstream. And why is that? Because there's something called IGF binding protein. So in the blood, there are these proteins that circulate. They grab IGF molecules and inactivate them, bind them up. That's what it's called. Only free IGF-1 can actually do something. So if you have a lot of binding proteins grabbing up all the IGF-1, it only lasts 20 minutes in your system when you take a shot of it. Same thing when your body naturally releases it. But if you put this added group, these 3 side groups, that's why it's called long R3, 3 side groups, the binding proteins don't recognize it and can't inactivate it. So it stays longer in your system, a lot longer, until the liver actually breaks it down, sometimes up to 20 hours. So theoretically, long R3 IGF-1 works better. And when I used to get it back in the late 90s, from I think it came from Australia. It was GrowPep was the company that was making it. It worked phenomenal. Now, I don't think it ever worked quite as good, from coming from a lot of these peptide sources. Now, I don't know who's making it, or it's probably being made in China, I'm sure. So I don't know what the strength of it is. I don't know if it's the same product. It's impossible to validate whether it is or not. But assuming it is the right product and that people are getting the right kind, it should theoretically work similarly. I think people do too much of it, and then what happens is that you stop responding to it. Because if you have too much IGF in your system, your IGF-1 receptors downregulate very quickly. They're not like androgen receptors. These are protein receptors. They downgrade super, super fast. So you can't take a lot of it. It's like 10 to 20 micrograms you want to take. Maybe 4 weeks on, and I always tell people take 2 weeks off, 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, that kind of a rotation. If you take more than 20 micrograms per day, and I usually recommend people take a post-workout, it stops working really fast, like probably after 5 or 6 days. And so you don't want to do that. So you could take 100, 200 micrograms if you want for the day, but you're going to respond for 3 or 4 days, and then it's not going to do anything anymore. So, that's up to you to do that. I'm just giving you my empirical knowledge that I've garnished over the last 30 years doing this. Now, the INCRELEX brand is actually the prescription brand. So they actually made a real, now they have prescription growth hormone. They have prescription IGF-1 now. And why they make it? Because they give it to kids who have growth disturbances. Kids are going to be dwarfs or very short stature. The advantage of the IGF-1 over growth hormone is that growth hormone kind of makes you insulin resistant. So sometimes it could cause problems with blood sugar and stuff like that in kids because they're taking really high dosages of it. So they find that the INCRELEX sometimes works better, especially some kids are resistant to GH. Their body doesn't turn into IGF-1, so they can use the direct INCRELEX. Now, the problem with INCRELEX is it's not long R3, so it doesn't last that long in your system. So you really need to take it a couple times throughout the day. Now, I've seen dosages from 20 to 40 micrograms, to 60 micrograms per day, spread out throughout the day, because like I said, it's only not going to last very long in your system. I try to probably time one of those shots post-workout, but I don't know anyone who's gotten tremendous results from it. And I think once again, the problem is that it's released and then it doesn't last that long. In your body kind of trickles it out, pulses it out throughout the day in response to growth hormone release. GH is not released once a day in your body. It's pulsed throughout the day when you're sleeping, after you train, after, in a low carb environment, so it's constantly being pulsed, which means that IGF-1 is constantly being pulsed from the liver. So I think that's why you get a better response. And that's why training actually is a good way to get IGF release, because that's a stimulus of it. So, Having said that, if you have access to INCRELEX, you can try it. Once again, it is a legitimate prescribed drug, and if you have a prescription form of it, it's going to theoretically work better than maybe a peptide form of a peptide site that sells IGF-1 that you don't really know if it's real or not. So, but if I had to choose between two real ones, I would choose the long R3 IGF-1.
Mark Costanzo, sodium loading. He wants to know your thoughts. Sodium loading day before a show, not from junk food, just from extra salt with carbs.
I never restrict sodium, so I don't need to sodium load anyone. If you're that sodium depleted, and then you have to try to jam it in the last day, I'm not really keen on that. What I do is I do give people salty. I mean, I do give them meals that are salty. Like sometimes the night before, they're getting a burger and fries, and there's tons of salt on that. In the morning, I'm giving them pancakes and eggs, and they're salting their eggs and stuff like that. So yeah, I believe that you should give salt. Because remember, diazide depletes sodium in the body and water. So when you wake up in the morning, you might be really flat, and it could be because you lost too much sodium. So you take in some salt in your diet. You're not really drinking the morning of the show, but you're getting liquids indirectly from the foods you're eating, whether it be rice or potatoes or even eggs. Have liquid in it, so your body will take that liquid with the sodium and put it into the muscle cells, and it's going to make them a lot fuller. So what people I think make the mistake of doing is they deplete sodium the whole diet. They never, and then they try to jam it in at the end, and then they drink tons of water, and they do all this water manipulation, sodium manipulation. All you're looking to do is screw it up. Keep sodium high the whole diet. Don't cut water. If you find out what works for you. Like some people don't need a lot of water. Some people like to drink a lot of water. Whatever you do, keep it consistent the whole last week. And then that last day, just cut your water at like 8 o'clock for a Saturday morning prejudging. And you know what? Don't ever take sodium out. I wouldn't be eating tons of sodium the 3 days you're carving up, but I definitely wouldn't cut the sodium out. Now, if my ex used to cover her food in soy sauce, and I thought she was crazy, but she never held any water, because when you eat a lot of sodium, your body just pees out the excess. It keeps your aldosterone levels very low. And if you don't have aldosterone released, then you're not going to retain sodium. By restricting sodium on a long-term basis, your aldosterone level is going to be really high. And then if you do eat salt, you will retain fluid. So the key is to keep those aldosterone levels suppressed. And the only way to do that would be to eat sodium on a regular basis. So never restrict sodium in your diet. If you tend to be a little water retentive going into that last day while you're carving, you could cut back sodium a little bit on the day before the show when you're taking your diuretics, just so you can deplete that sodium out. And then the morning of the show, you can add it back in, like via salting your foods and eating some saltier foods too. Lightly salted rice cakes work well as well. So it's really on a person-to-person, type of basis. But for most people, you're better off not restricting anything. Don't restrict sodium. Don't restrict water that last week. Don't drink extra water. Just do what you've been doing and then cut it the last day.
Let's go to Shawnee Boyfit. How long do unopened vials of test last for? I tend to buy a year's supply in one go so they can be set in a drawer for a year or so. Do they lose potency?
They're good for years. I would venture to guess they're probably good for 15, 20 years after, as long as they haven't been opened or anything like that. I mean, there's no what's going to happen? If you have a bottle and there's nothing settling on the bottom where like the stuff came out of solution, then it's probably good. I mean, it's probably not going to break down. Even if it broke down 1 or 2%, you'll never notice a difference. So yeah, oil-based drugs really are very, very more stable. I think protein hormones are a little more sensitive, and but if you keep the stuff in the refrigerator, GH in the fridge, IGF-1 in the freezer, that stuff will last a long time. It's temperature control that's key. If something gets too hot, the heat will break it down. That's the problem. So it is what it is. Like I said, I have never seen anyone who said, "Oh, you know what? The stuff doesn't work anymore. I don't understand. It was great 5 years ago, and now it doesn't work anymore." Never had anyone tell me that. So I think you're okay.
We'll take 2-3 more questions. Did you help or coach any pro wrestlers besides Triple H? Scott Steiner had somewhat of a similar upper body physique as yours back in the day.
I did Stone Cold Steve Austin's diet for a couple months. When he was really making his TV show come back, and he wanted to get in really good shape, and he was really into the ketogenic diet. And he actually interviewed me on his Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast. If you ever go back and look at that, it was a great interview. If you want to really know about the ketogenic diet, he asked me some amazing questions, really thought-provoking stuff, and it was good stuff. If you go watch, I know it was a very popular episode that he put up, but he was really into it. And I've done other wrestlers' diets indirectly. I do Stephanie McMahon's diet. I did the mother, Linda McMahon. I did her diet. I actually met her in her house and went over. I was dieting her for a while. She was trying to do a photo shoot and get in the best shape of her life. So I've worked with that whole family. The only person I didn't really help in the family is Vince, but he uses all my supplements. I know they love the nutrition, the Species Nutrition line of products. But, a lot of wrestlers have, buy products and will ask a question here and there. I notice I'll get someone, emailing me out of nowhere. Hey, this is so-and-so, just wondered this. And I don't want to use their names just because, they weren't clients of mine. So, but by and far, a lot of these guys are really into health and nutrition and trying to get in the best shape of life. And I sat at a booth with Scott Steiner for Metrics. It must have been 97 or 8. I think it was at the Olympia. He was super cool. This is when he was really big too. His arms are huge, and we were talking. All we did was talk bodybuilding the whole time. I don't think we brought wrestling up at a single time. And we had a lot of mutual friends. He knew my friend Anthony DeRezzo, and he knew obviously Eddie Cohn, and he knew all those guys up in Boston because he's from that area, and just a super nice guy. So most of the wrestlers are really, they're bodybuilders who, got into wrestling because they wanted to make money. And, most of them would rather sit home and work out every day in the gym, but, that's what they do. So good people. I can't say a bad word about any wrestlers, at all. I interviewed Batista. We talked diet also about him, and he's obviously a big star now in the Marvel universe and that Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's been getting a lot of good parts in movies. So I'm really happy for him. Dave's a good guy.
Rachel Palmer, Misfigure. Now, this is a topic that you guys discussed last year during the Olympia weekend, and I'm sure it's going to come up again this year. And that is, are there way too many? Well, his indirect question is, are there too many Olympia qualifiers show this year, which in turn creates bigger lineup of athletes, and in turn makes the show go for too long, longer waiting times for athletes backstage. For example, there will be, in his estimation, 70 bikini athletes. Now, A, your opinion, B, the solution. I remember last year you had discussed one possible solution, and that is making it a 2-day show. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I hate the fact, at the Olympia that there's that many people. That's why I really love the Arnold, because the Arnold invites, 10, 15 people, and that's it, right? I mean, it's limited, and you can actually enjoy it. You can critique it. You can savor it because you have a limited number of athletes up there. So I can critique all 15 or all 12 or whatever the numbers they invite for that particular class. And I can do a really good job on it because there's a limited number. But when you have 70 athletes, am I going to critique 70 athletes? Now, back in the day when I was first starting RXMuscle, I used to critique everyone. I used to go to the nationals and critique every single athlete. 800 people I was doing critiques for in our forums. Everyone had I had something to say about everyone, but it's just too much work. It's not that enjoyable. And, unless the competitors loved it, but most people are just interested in the top people. So, if you have that many girls, I'd say do maybe on Thursday, you do like a qualifier, like an elimination round type of thing where you do a prejudge, like a pre-judging, and then you knock it down to the top 15. And then the top 15 will go to the normal prejudging for bikini, the next day. And then obviously finals on Saturday night. You have your top girls there too. So I think that's a better way to do it because I think people get fatigued when they see too many people in the lineup. It's like, all right, bikini's going, 70 girls. All right, I'm going to go to the bathroom now. I'm going to buy a pretzel and a drink and I'll come back. And they probably still won't be done with all the girls walking out. You don't want that. That drags the show down and slows it down. So I think this should be, they're not going to do it this year, obviously, but I think maybe moving forward, I like the fact that there's a lot of pro shows. So I like to talk about shows every single weekend. It makes it exciting, but you got to do something. Let them go to the Olympia. They qualified. They're at the Olympia, but then you do a pre-judging so we can cut it down to 15. They did that at nationals. You know, when you go to nationals, they do a preliminary round, and then the top 15 are the only ones that come out and actually do their routine. I mean, their 60-second mandatory poses, and then they do the prejudging with the top 15 only. Everyone else goes home because you know what? If you don't make the cut at the elite level, sorry, it's not it's not Little League where everyone gets a chance to play the game type of thing, you know? So I think that would be a better way to go.
Stop me if I asked this last week. I didn't, in my head, I didn't ask it, but we have been getting a lot of pre-competition questions. So this one's from Black Belt Bodybuilding. Do you have a loose equation to follow as far as carbs to give to someone before a show based off body size and gender, or body weight rather?
No, because you know what the problem is? I've seen girls that can eat more carbs than guys, and I've seen guys that need less carbs than girls. So it's really variable. You know, I don't carb up women a lot usually, unless they have a ridiculously fast metabolism, and most women don't, you know. So there's not a formula for how many grams of carbs to give someone. You know, I kind of have it in my head, given the person's body weight, how much I should give them. And it usually for men, it ranges. The day before the show, I usually get them 300 grams plus carbs. Now, remember, I'm also giving them fat and protein at the same time. So calorically, they're pretty high. Very rarely do I ever give a woman 300 grams. You know, most of the time it's like, you know, maybe 180, 200 grams the most. But it depends. And sometimes I'll carb guys up sometimes 3 days in a row, and then the fourth day being the day of the show. And then women, I might just give carbs the day before the show because they just don't need them. You know, so most women don't need to be fully carbed. As a matter of fact, if they are, they sometimes lose their shape and femininity and the lines. They just get too veiny and you know, and sometimes it smooths them out a little bit. So you kind of have to go by trial and error. And that's why what I do is the weeks leading up to the show, I'll do carb up, you know, days. Like on a Saturday, all right, Saturday, you're going to eat this many grams of carbs. And then I'll see what you look like the next day and say, okay, you know what? You filled up really well. That's what we're going to stick with. Or no, you know what? You're too flat. We're going to feed you more next weekend to see how that works. Or maybe you smoothed out. I fed you too much. We're going to cut it back next weekend. And I do this leading up to the show, like 2 or 3 weeks before, so I can see for a first-time client how they respond. If I've worked with the person before, then I kind of know what to feed them, you know, and how they're going to respond. A lot of it is just intuition because I've been doing this a long time, so I can kind of look at a body. I can see how their body's been responding, how lean they are. You know, are they just going to make it, or have they been ready for 2 or 3 weeks already? And then I know what to give them, and that comes with experience. I'm a mathematician. I like to quantify and quantify everything. But with carbing up, it's really individual specific. It's hard to just put it on paper. Hey, this is how you're going to do it. It works every time. That's not how it works.
Take one more question from Get Big and Strong, or Get Strong and Big. What would be your protocol in order to fix someone with a leaky gut?
I would recommend them using my 3-week detox program. I give it out for free. All you have to do is reach out to me at huge285@AOL.com, and I will send it to you for free. It's a 3-week, you know, restrictive type diet. You only eat 12 hours out of the day. You don't use caffeine. You don't do, dairy, no wheat. It's a lower protein diet. So to give the digestive system, the organs of digestion, the colon, the small intestine, the pancreas, the liver, gallbladder, all these organs just get rest, kidneys, so they're not being overtaxed like they normally are on a regular basis, where we're feeding a lot of food into them, 6-8 times a day. And what it serves to do is allow the body to detoxify itself. And a lot of people will do these fasts where they don't eat anything, or they just drink something, for 7 days. For a bodybuilder, that's not good because you'll lose muscle. You're not going to be able to train, during those periods of time. So this is a slower detox, and it's based on a book called Clean that I read, where the doctor explains the whole technique. And he basically says, you don't need to be so radical. Your body can detox instead of 1 week, do it over 3 weeks, but just don't eat 12 hours out of the day. Because the first 8 hours is when it takes your body to get rid of all the food. That 8 to 12 hour mark of no eating is when all the detoxification occurs. So if you give your body 4 hours out of every day, for 3 weeks straight, 21 days, you're going to have enough time for the body to get rid of all the toxins, the organs to dump everything that it was kind of retaining. And what you'll notice after those 3 weeks is your eyes get really white colored. You just look healthier. You feel good. Your skin is clearer, and it works really well. And so that's my suggestion on how to detox. And I've given this program to a lot of people, and they all agree. The first week's the hardest because you have really weird bathroom habits because you're detoxing all this crazy stuff. And it's really important to take a fiber supplement during this time period. And that's all in the program. I put it all in there because you want to get all the stuff out of your body. You don't want to reabsorb those toxins. By the second week, you're feeling much better. You feel good. Your bathroom, your bowel movements are kind of normalized. You're going to look healthier. You're not even going to be that hungry anymore because your body is like operating at much better efficiency. And by the third week, you almost want to keep going with it, but that's enough is enough after 3 weeks. And then you can ease back into eating your normal foods again, but in higher protein. But I'm telling you, you will feel really good. And how people always ask me how often to do it. Probably once a year is good, especially if you're cycling drugs and stuff like that and using massive amounts of food. If you're eating pretty healthy, like I eat pretty healthy all year round, and I don't really eat excessive amounts of food, I'm always kind of detoxing. There's never a point where I'm like so toxic because I'm gorging on food. I don't do that anymore. So I never even do the detox anymore because I don't feel like I need it because I'm always taking fiber and I'm always doing, and obviously probiotics, a good probiotic in there is going to be important too to kind of prevent leaky. What leaky gut is essentially is it's the lining of your colon and small intestine, which normally has a real thick bacteria coating on it. We call that the probiotic bacteria, protecting so that pathogens can't get into the lining of your intestinal tract. Well, if those get exhausted, whether it's from taking antibiotics or you're eating poorly or you have some kind of like inflammation in your gut, you can exhaust and all those bacteria can die off. And that leaves the gut vulnerable. And that's why they call it leaky gut, because now the gut can leak stuff in that normally wouldn't absorb into the bloodstream and you become toxic. So to rebuild that layer, you need to do the detox program with a probiotic, which is going to repopulate the good bacteria in there. And then you want to feed those bacteria. And a product like FIBERLYZE is perfect because these bacteria ferment soluble fiber. So they'll ferment a lot of that, psyllium that you're taking in the FIBERLYZE, and that will not only not repopulate the bacteria, but it's going to give them a good food source on a regular basis, and they will grow and they will become vigorous and they will prevent any like junk from getting into your bloodstream, and you're going to feel a million times better. So it's a whole holistic type of approach. And once again, as long as you follow the rules that I lay out in the detox, it's going to work amazing. I promise you.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder right now at speciesnutrition.com. This is the final day of our sale on pumpkin spice ISOLIZE for $24.99, 22 servings, $24.99. Deal expires tonight at 11:59 p.m. U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Speciesnutrition.com. That's going to do for our show. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.